Hello and welcome to What Can You Do with a Cyber Range? Today's awesome webinar is sponsored by SimSpace and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I have to say I feel very lucky to be your moderator for this discussion today because I think cyber ranges are really cool. Now, I'm guessing that a lot of the audience out there is maybe kind of split today. So we'll have those of you who know exactly what a cyber range is and are really excited to learn more. And then there's probably a good chunk of you out there who have a total blank slate or a mostly blank slate, and you want to learn everything. So here's the good news. The answer to all of you is yes, we got you. Today, we will learn together about the concepts and tools that enable the SimSpace cyber range. Our expert presenter will explain how this testing environment can help you strengthen your security and allow organizations to go from maybe a theoretical understanding to a very solid and realistic knowledge and sense of safety and well-being, knowing that your approach to security has been tried, tested, and confirmed. There is so much to cover here today, and honestly, I don't want to take a single minute away from the discussion. So I'm just going to zip through a few of those important housekeeping points and get us on our way. First, I want to draw your attention to the questions section of your webinar console. Now, the absolute best part of a webinar like this is the chance to ask questions directly of an expert that I'm going to introduce to you in just a moment here. And I know that this topic is going to get all your inquisitive minds fired up, so make sure to get those questions in. Now, hey, if we're unable to get to your question during the live session, don't worry because the SimSpace team is going to follow up with you after the webinar wraps today. Now, I do want to remind you also that the question console is a great place to say hi, reach out to your friends in the Actual Tech Media community. It's also the best place to let us know if you do have any technical issues today. Knock on wood, of course. Now, I want to remind you all that a browser refresh is going to get rid of any of the usual tech gremlins. But if they're really clinging on today and causing some problems, don't worry about it. Just shoot a message to the Actual Tech Media team in that questions tab, and we'll be there to help support. Okay, so if you're following along in your audience console there, we were just looking at the questions tab. Now the tab just next to it is the handout section. So I want you to take a look at that handout section. And the thing I want to draw your attention to there is a white paper from SimSpace. It's called 4 Reasons to Use a Cyber Range. It's a really engaging read. So download that now, save it to read after we wrap today, because I promise you, you're going to want to learn more when we finish. So make sure you've got that ready. Now, in that handouts tab, you're also going to see a link to the Gorilla Guide Book Club, the Actual Tech Media webinar calendar. So basically, click around, explore, get to know that handout section. Lots of great resources there. Now, it's not just awesome content we're giving away today. We also have a $300 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing, and we're going to do that at the end of the webinar. So stick around. Now, you must be in attendance during the live webinar to qualify for the prize. And all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, no problem. Head on back to that handout section that we were just chatting about. Scroll on down to the bottom, and you can find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. Okay, well, that's it for the housekeeping. I told you I would keep it short and sweet, and here we are ready to jump into our webinar. So I am very excited to introduce you all to Josh Mason. He's Global Partners SE Lead Enablement at SimSpace. Now, I have to tell you, I cannot wait to learn a little bit more about cyber ranges, and I know that we have a lot of great content to cover here today. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand the mic on over to you, Josh. Thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. And as the SE lead and enablement manager, my job is to get people understanding what we do here. So SimSpace is a range platform, and we build high-fidelity bespoke ranges that fit whatever our customers need. And a lot of people ask, what is a range? Well, my background, I was a pilot in the United States Air Force and then a cyber warfare officer. I taught at the United States Air Force Special Operations School and have also taught at the Defense Cybercrime Center's Cyber Training Academy before coming to SimSpace. And so I have some experience in what I'm used to as a range and what many people in the military know as a range. And I want to go through an example of one of those to kind of give you a picture of what we can do with a cyber range. So a cyber range over here on the right, it's a giant network. On the left, we've got the Eglin Range, and let me do a little bit of history. I'll take a couple minutes for this. The Eglin Range is a landmass of over 1,000 acres of forest, swamp, and shoreline down in the Florida Panhandle. And On top of that, there's also airspace that covers large portions of the Florida Panhandle, southern Alabama, and a giant chunk of the Gulf of Mexico. It was initially established prior to World War II in 1937 as a location to test aircraft, and it still does. It then grew into a place to test weapons. It's a large space that's very uninhabited. And so if it falls off a plane, if it fires off of an aircraft, if it flies through the air, it's been tested and exploded in or around the Eglin Range. It's also been used for mission rehearsal, dating all the way back to the Doolittle Raiders and Son Tay raids during the Vietnam conflict, and is currently used for ground training. It is the swamp portion of Ranger School, the Navy's EOD, Explosive Ordnance Disposal School, where they train all EOD technicians across all branches, and is the 7th Special Forces Group, also homed at Eglin Air Force Base, works on the Eglin Range. There's also training occurring in the sky. The 1st Special Operations Wing at Hurlburt Field does all of their daily flying and mission execution and rehearsal in the Eglin Range. That's a C-130, AC-130 gunship there on the left. Not my plane, but very similar. And I got used to hearing them flying every afternoon over the range, blowing holes in the ground. So a range can be used to test, it can be used to train, it can be used for mission rehearsal. So what do we do with a cyber range? Well, in 2015, our founder, Hutch, a former F-15 pilot himself, was working at U.S. Cyber Command and was put in charge of building out U.S. Cyber Flag. It's very similar to Red Flag or Green Flag or Maple Flag, other training event exercises that the U.S. military and Canadian military actually put on that are large scale, where giant chunks of the U.S. military go to war in ranges across the country. Well, there wasn't a high fidelity range to do this for cyber warfare. So he reached out to Lee Rossi, who was working at MIT Lincoln Lab and had been working on some amazing technology, and they built out CyberFlag. We are now headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts, right down the street actually from MIT Lincoln Lab. And we're the market leader in cyber ranges. Our largest consumer is the U.S. Department of Defense and U.S. Cyber Command. For them, we have a 25,000 endpoint range that they use for the persistent cyber training environment. We've grown and expanded to include 5 of the top 10 banks in the world, some global system integrators, and some ISPs even. And we continue to grow and provide what we've scaled for the U.S. military and our ability to hone and refine our ranges so that we can provide a product that is bespoke to our customers. And the way that that's worked in the past, we've done large-scale exercises that included DARPA, SIFMA, Harvard Kennedy School back in 2018 ran an exercise to test federal election voting boxes, and they were able to do that with our platform. And we still consistently provide the persistent cyber training environment for the U.S. military. A range, like everything in cyber, has layers. And the emulation layer is something everyone's used to. vCenter is not new. Labs are not new. Virtualizing computers, servers, switches, and routers is not new. And especially with cloud computing, it's something everyone's used to. But we also have the ability to bring in OT, IoT, ICS devices and connect the physical world into our lab, our range environment. We throw on top of that actual routing and switching, Active Directory, and our emulated users, which is a little different. We don't generate traffic. We don't play back PCAP captures. We actually have an engine. It's one of the big things that our team built out in the beginning. Emulated users that are on your endpoints in the range who are creating files, deleting files, opening emails, saving things to the shared drive, navigating to websites, making blog posts, all the things that your users can do. And we can hone those and tune that to fit the sort of traffic you would expect in your environment on your enterprise system. And then we throw on top of that our participation layer. We run events where a blue team, a red team, or a purple team and evaluators can all interact in this space. What that tends to look like is we have a range that includes, in this case, there's firewalls, there's ATMs, there's the line of business and payment servers. This is just one example of a fairly medium-sized financial institution. And we can throw in any solution that the client uses on a regular basis. If they use Splunk, if they've got Palo Altos, if they have CrowdStrike and Falcon, we can integrate whatever it is into the lab so that when you're having an exercise in the lab, it looks and feels like you're actually on your own network. And ideally, we create a virtual twin of your environment. It's something that was spoken about at the Gartner keynote a few months ago, and it's something that we have the ability to build out and produce. With that range, you can do process and stack optimization. With a range, you want to evaluate a new product. You don't need to figure out how to fit it into your enterprise system. You can throw it into the range, and if it doesn't work, you can tune it there until you get it to a point where you realize we don't want this product, we do want this product, we want it, and we want it to look like this. You can do all of that identification and tuning in the range. Plus, you can then throw your teams in there and do skills evaluation. You can do continuing education. You can pull in virtual machines that are available on the web or create your own. You can take your own servers and virtualize them and put them in the range and see if they're vulnerable, if we can attack them. If you're running a Java application, put it in the range in the DMZ and see if we can attack it with Log4j. That might not be something you want to do on your enterprise system, but in the range, you can do that because worst case scenario, you just got to turn it off and turn it back on again. We can then go even deeper and do risk mitigation and compliance reporting in the range. It's all dependent on how much you scale and how much you want it to look and feel exactly like your network. Imagine doing a pen test where you don't have to keep things out of scope with fear of knocking them over, including OT and ICS devices. You can hit them because worst case scenario, you can just turn it off and turn it back on again. We can then use the technology for candidate assessment and individual training. We run CTFs and team versus team events. And a little bit of what that looks like, especially with all of our advantages, let me build this out, is, here's one example, just a lab environment that we created for UTSA. And this one is what we're kind of used to for a lab environment. But it has a little higher fidelity, and we can tune it specifically to the needs of what they're teaching. If they've got specific devices or software that come up in the class, we can make the range look just like that, which is not that different from most people who have a range in like vCenter. What's a little more impressive is our ability to scale at large amounts. So this was an event last year that we ran for US Cyber Command, and they had over 3,000 endpoints with over 500 team members, and I'll zoom in a little bit for you. 30 different teams, each with their own enterprise network there to defend. A gray space and a staff cell for managing it, and then a whole separate Op4 to attack all these different teams to see, are they going to identify intrusions? Are they going to be able to mitigate? Can they do proper investigations? We can then scale that down and make that work for an individual organization. So we did this last week for one of the top banks in the world. We ran 3 of their SOC teams over a 24-hour process, 3 different shifts, one in North America, one in Europe, and one in India, and tested to see if they could actually handle our attacks. Our red team went at them, and with with everything they had, from specialized malware that we've built out to 0 days that we've created, all the way to Cobalt Strike and Metasploit, some off-the-shelf Git rats, if you will, to identify if the team can actually operate and how they follow the processes that the organization set out. You have a SOC team, and you might know that they've done this course or that course, they have this certification, they have this degree, but how do you know that they work together, that they actually follow the playbooks that you've set out? You could do a breach and attack simulation, you could do a tabletop with them, but really, let's put them on machines, throw malware at them, throw a whole incident, and see how do they perform under pressure. It's something that we do in the military on a regular basis, and it's something that now, with a high fidelity range, we can do with organizations, with SOC teams, with security teams. This is an example. We worked with a retailer, one of the top few retailers in the United States, and ran one of these events a few weeks ago. And each of those different colors is a separate attack. And every time there's more than one line, that means we had a C2 callback, and a third line means we had data exfiltration. We can also use this to optimize security stacks. I mentioned it before, but if you make a digital twin, then you can switch out parts, you can switch out firewalls, you can switch out EDRs, you can switch out sort solutions, get a test or a license only for a set period of time from a vendor, plug that into the range, and see if you like it more. It's one of those things, to do it on your enterprise systems, a big pull. But in a range, it's a lot simpler because you're not going to interfere with business operations while you're doing that evaluation. And we've built this out and utilized it for some major organizations, some major corporations, to do a full spectrum. Test their stack, test their people, test their processes, because people, process, and technology is the key to risk management. Now, what does our platform look like? And I'll run you through this quickly. We have a video out on YouTube that goes into a little more fidelity, but we start with a portal where navigation is fairly simple and tech support is easy to access. And we have a wizard for building out a range. And given a couple minutes, we could have a high fidelity range that is ready to go with users, Active Directory, Outlook, all set up just like that because our back end is all prepared. We then use these in live action events where we can tailor participant levels to their needs. If the red team is participating, you don't want them to see the full network. You want them to have to discover just like everyone else. Maybe your blue team, you only want them to be able to access the SOC, that security subnet. Everything else, they need to tunnel into the same way they would in your enterprise network. If the SOC is in New York and they are investigating a machine in LA, they're not going to fly out to LA and walk up to the console and work on it. They need to PowerShell or remote desktop or use their source solution or whatnot to access that machine to pull information. And just like you would a real-world investigation, we can implement that in the range. People have access to the machines where they can console in, and it's similar to Guacamole if you're used to a web interface for a virtual machine, where then it's fully operational desktop right in your browser. We use these events tied to objectives and key cyber terrain specific to your organization and what your needs are, and then can tie in our automated attacks, which match the IOCs and the TTPs that you would find in MITRE ATT&CK Navigator and in, say, your CTI from Mandiant. If we have a Leviathan threat, it's going to attack and operate just like Leviathan, launching off a phishing campaign with a downloader that the user, our automated emulated users, will open up the attachment. They will run the file because they are Carl and they have poor security training. So they open and execute the files just like you want them to when you're an attacker. And this is important because then we see if users, who are one of the hardest things for us security folks, if they do what they do we have the mitigations in place to secure and investigate and mitigate our network from attacks? These events, we use defender logs, a ticketing system within the environment. That way we can identify threat actions, we can see what the security team is doing, and then we tie those to the automated attacks to identify whether they were successful in achieving the objective set out for the event. We can view these automated attacks in real time with our network impact map. And at the end, in the assessment phase, we can correlate the defensive tickets to the attack campaigns to identify how effective the team was in achieving their outcomes. We have live action event scoring, and through that we can then provide remediation, maybe process improvement, and we also have training available on our platform. It's not one of our primary things, but it is something that we are quite proud of, and our training is constantly being added to. When I began here a few months ago, we had 500 hours of training. We're now at 750 hours of training, and that's going to only continue and grow. And new training comes out pretty quickly. On the slides, you might see the PwnKit and Log4 shell. As soon as those CVEs, as soon as those vulnerabilities hit the news, about a week, we had training up on the platform. And since we have the virtual machines for the training, we have the virtual machines to throw into a range if you want to see what does this look like in our environment. Overall, it covers a wide array of skills and knowledge, and within that training, we also provide little labs and ranges built on our same infrastructure. We can then tie these labs together, and you can run a whole event where every participant sees the same lab, sees the same questions, and we can test and assess how everyone is doing. We can even set this up for assessments where a user can run through one of these challenges. You would see the score, and they don't even need to make an account on the platform. It would be great for onboarding and determining whether someone actually has the skills that their resume and LinkedIn say they have. We also have a whole personnel dashboard where you can assign different training, different challenges to your team and see how do we do as an organization? Where do people need training? This was kind of a quick demo and talk about a range, but I would love to answer any questions that you might have.
Oh, that's so awesome, Josh. What a great presentation. I love the metaphor that you brought in with the Eglin range and how it relates to what you do. I feel like I got a whole extra bonus history podcast within the webinar today, so that was just fascinating. We have a lot of great questions coming in from our audience already. I want to make sure that we can get to as many as we can today. So let's get rolling. First off, Josh, can you tell us a bit more about how user emulation works?
So we have a puppet that runs on the back end, and it's neat technology where, again, our emulated users will actually be running on each individual machine. And if you were to console into that machine, you'll see it running things without your input. They will open up Outlook, read, send emails, delete emails, which makes investigations fun and difficult because they might delete that email that actually started off your whole infection. They'll upload files to the shared drive. They'll download files to the shared drive. They will navigate to things outside of the network. And we have an external internet inside the range that then provides actual telemetry, not a PCAP replay, not a network traffic generator, but actual traffic in real time running across your firewalls, running across your sensors. Okay, well, that is impressive. Next question here from our audience. We have an audience member wondering who needs cyber range. So are there particular verticals or industries or business types that would benefit most, or is it kind of a pretty broad reach? Yeah, when I started here, one of my good friends, my old boss, Neil Bridges, asked me about a use case. One of his friends when we were at Gartner, he's a CISO, and he said, does their organization need a range? And hearing that they used an MSSP, that their security team was really only 3 strong, No, I don't think that they necessarily would need a range. They might be it might be useful as a digital twin, but really I want their MSSP to have a range. I want them to test themselves on a regular basis. Maybe have us or one of our partners like Mandiant, who does threat space, to do training and test their SOC team, throw real malware against them, see how they respond. Do they actually follow the procedures that the SOC leads have set out? Or, I don't know, we found out last week that there's some participants in the SOC who were kind of cowboying it last week, and they're going to have some remediation training with their own team in the next couple weeks. So those guys, people running a SOC, the people who will be running an investigation, maybe pen testers, or if you're at a cyber maturity where having a digital twin to test configurations, that might be the level. But small teams, small companies, it might not be a great fit.
I love that. Yeah, it's so important to make sure that you're getting the right tool for your organization, for what you actually need, what you can manage. So that's a very helpful answer. We did have a question that was kind of a bit of a follow-up to that. Someone in our audience is wondering whether you might actually tailor simulations for different verticals and how often you might update some of those.
We had one LFE last week, a live fire exercise that was run 24 hours straight, which was hard for our team. At least the SOC shifts got to leave after 8 hours. And it was very financial motivated. There were ATMs. There's a version of Swift on that range. The one that they used last week actually has 1,100 endpoints. It's quite large. A week before that, I was a scribe at an LFE. It was 2 or 4 4-hour shifts over 2 days for 4 different SOC teams. And for that, it looked very much like their local network, if you will, for their retail business, where they had an east site and a west site and different server nets. And yeah, we tailor specific to the individual, and we can fit whatever vertical, we can fit whatever solution, whatever software they're running. It's one of the great things of just having the capability of building a bespoke range.
Josh, thank you again so much for the amazing presentation and for sticking around to answer some of these questions. This has been absolutely fascinating. And we still have so many questions left. I wish we could keep digging into these. We are getting pretty close to the end of our time here, so we will have to wrap it up there. But Josh, before you take off, if anyone out there is ready and excited to jump in with SimSpace, they want to get rolling, what do they do? What's their first step?
Yeah, if you go to our website, simspace.com, there's a place to set up a call with one of our sales reps or get a demo from me or one of our other sales engineers. You can find us on LinkedIn, or you can find myself on LinkedIn, Joshua Mason, and would love to answer any questions or put you in touch with whoever you need to get you what you need.
I love that, Josh. So many great ways to connect and get some more information, especially after we wrap up today, because I know everyone out there is fired up and ready to learn more and start digging into cyber ranges and how they might work at their organizations. So, Josh, I want to thank you once again for a great presentation and for sticking around to answer some of the questions from our audience. Now, I know that there were a lot of questions that we did not get to today, but don't worry. I'm going to remind you again, the SimSpace team will get all of the questions asked during this webinar here today, so you will get a chance to hear back from them. Now, if you are looking for more exciting content right away, don't forget to head on over to that handouts tab we talked about at the top of the webinar here. Download that SimSpace white paper, really interesting and a great follow-up to the chat today. Well, now I know what you're all waiting for. You can see it up on the screen. So let's get into our prize giveaway. Now, a quick reminder that you do need to be here in live attendance at the webinar to win. So today's winner of a $300 Amazon gift card is Mike Grove of Arkansas. Mike Grove of Arkansas. I love that. Congratulations to Mike. Now, as always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after the webinar wraps today. Now, with that, On behalf of Actual Tech Media and our team here, I really want to thank SimSpace for making this whole webinar possible. A giant thank you again to Josh for an absolutely fascinating presentation. I learned a ton. I really just love all the concepts and ideas around cyber ranges. And it's neat. I like that Josh always gives us a little bit of a history background too. So I love that. Sending some high fives and special thank yous to all of you for attending and asking some great questions today. Webinars like this really are fun to be a part of, especially when it's something that might be a little newer to some people or something you haven't considered before, because, here we all get the opportunity to connect and kind of explore together. I know I've had a wonderful time chatting with all of you. I can't wait to see you all again soon. And until then, I hope you have an absolutely beautiful rest of your day.